Well, hello everyone. I'm Fred Yelverton. I am the turf grass weed scientist at NC State, so we're going to talk a little turf weed control. Thank you for Rick Brandenburg for allowing me to be on Turf Bugs and Rock and Roll. He was saying that the site needs to be improved, so he put me in here to fill in for him. So that's what we'll try to do here. So what we're going to do is we're going to talk about some kind of early summer weed control issues, weed management issues. So one of the things that I think everybody's noticed this year is that rainfall has really been pretty sporadic across North Carolina. Many people have had adequate rainfall, and some have not. Some are very dry, and that influences weed populations. So typically, the weeds we see during wet years are sedges. Sedges are wet-loving plants. Kalinga is one that we really see a lot of in a wet year. And pre-emergence herbicides really have very little effect on Kalinga, so that pretty much ebbs and flows with the weather. Purple and yellow nut sedge also prefer wet conditions, and those will be worse in a wet year. Dry year weeds we see are things like Bahia grass, Dallas grass, and things like that. So a lot of times weeds will tell us what kind of year we're having. But the point is, and also I might mention too, that typically in dry years, the pre-emergence herbicides do work better because they don't degrade as much. So we tend to have less crabgrass and less goosegrass when we have dry summers. Now here we are in spring, so we don't know what kind of summer we're going to have. July and August are our wettest months of the year, so that will heavily influence what kind of weed populations we have. I will mention, though, that when we do initiate post-emergence herbicide programs, we have to always be careful that we apply those herbicides when weeds are actively growing. All of these post-emergence herbicides we use, they interfere with some kind of growth process in plants, and is whether it's amino acid synthesis or photosynthesis or something like that. But the point is, if the plants are not growing, the herbicides just don't work. We also have trouble getting them in the plant when plants are stressed. So always remember to apply your post-emergence herbicides when there are active growth conditions. Probably some of the crabgrass and goosegrass post-emergence programs that we're going to use this year might be delayed a little bit because it compared to previous years, because especially last year, if you recall, we had a pretty uniformly wet spring. And we had a lot of crabgrass and goosegrass early. This year, there's not as much goosegrass coming up yet because it's been so dry. Crabgrass came up some early, but not a lot has emerged since then. So we may be looking at a little bit later season, later than normal, I should say, post-emergence weed control programs. We'll probably revisit post-emergence goosegrass again at some later point. But I will say we have a lot of new programs for post-emergence goosegrass that are very effective and also very cost-effective. Things like Syncor at 8 ounces applied and then watered in immediately. Things like Speed Zone plus only a 1/4 ounce per acre of Pilex tank mix gives us good goosegrass control. So we'll revisit some of those post-emergence treatments a little later. For crabgrass control in Bermuda grass, we still have, in golf courses at least, some limited use of MSMA. Now, MSMA needs to go on very young crabgrass. The only other option we have for post-emergence crabgrass control really is quinclorac. And I'll just mention with quinclorac, we always want to mix a methylated seed oil with quinclorac. It's very, very important to do that. And also we need to apply quinclorac on crabgrass when it's very small. The smaller the better. Now quinclorac will work on very large crabgrass, that crabgrass that we'll see maybe over in late August and September, but it struggles on the intermediate size crabgrass. So that sounds a little bit strange, but we do know the physiological reason for that. So quinclorac is on small crabgrass, pre-tiller to maybe 1 or 2 tillers. Once it gets past that and that medium size, it's not very effective, and then it gets effective again on big crabgrass. So we'll visit some more of those post-emergence treatments later on in the summer, but just a little bit on what we can expect in the summer of 2022. So thank you for the time, and I hope you have a good summer.